Do you want to write captivating song lyrics that not only hook your listeners from the beginning, but also keep them engaged? The best way to do this is to tell a story, and in this quick guide, I will take you through the 5 key moments that every story needs. So let's look at those 5 key story moments that we at StoryGrid call the 5 commandments of storytelling. Yes, we call them commandments because they are that important. So we can write songs that tell a story, and through that, communicate what's important to us in a way that we can bypass the listener's critical thinking, touch their heart, and make an impact on them. It's how we can actually get them to listen and keep paying attention to what we have to say. And if this is something that you'd like to learn how you can actually do this, then follow along. And those 5 commandments are the way we dramatize change in any unit of story, okay? Any unit of story means if you look at a book, it could be a single chapter. It could be the first act. It could be the entire global story. And this can also be applied to songwriting. And in order to tell a story that works, the narrative must abide by the 5 commandments of storytelling. Because those 5 commandments, those 5 key story moments, enable the audience to recognize that the story is a story and not just a series of interesting or blunt events. So just for clarification, I call those 5 commandments, I call them waypoints. You can also call them the key story moments, because I think with waypoints, it's much easier to look at them like the waypoints on a route, on a journey, because a story in itself is a progression from one place to another. And I want to give you a map so you know how to tell a story in your song, so you can take your audience along for the ride. But no matter what we call those 5 commandments, it's more important that you know them, know their job, and you include them in your lyrics. And how you can do that, that's what we're talking about in this video. And hey, I'm Melanie Naumann. I've worked as a story editor since 2015. I am a StoryGrid certified editor since 2019. And my focus is specifically on storytelling and songwriting. And over the past years, I've analyzed the storytelling in hundreds and hundreds of songs and in entire discographies. And the 5 commandments include an inciting into action, a turning point, the crisis, the climax, and the resolution. Now, before I guide you through them in this quick guide to narrative songwriting, please keep in mind that they are always the same waypoints, but they can be on different routes. So what do we mean by that? So one of the 2 possible directions of the 2 possible routes where you can actually take your song is that your song story can either tell a prescriptive tale, which means the story communicates a positive, empowering, and helpful message. It helps your audience move on if they ever encounter themselves in a similar situation. It marks the way to move forward in life. On the other hand, a story can also tell a cautionary tale. Look at this like you get taught a lesson because you watch how someone makes a mistake and see the consequences they suffer because of it. And you can learn from their mistakes without having to actually go through that yourself. So it's like the song story is like a warning, like a stop signal that keeps people from falling into the same trap. So we have the same 5 key story moments, the same 5 waypoints, but they can either follow the route, the direction of a cautionary or a prescriptive tale. And in general, let's look at how they work together. And just to be clear about it, I'm going to take you now through those 5 key story moments in a chronological order. But that doesn't mean when you're writing your songs, you have to follow it in a chronological order. You can also mix them. You can move them around in your song lyrics. And the best way to actually see how that is done or how you can do that is by studying other songs. Now, each day when you follow me on my YouTube channel, and each day I release a short 1-minute video where I go through those 5 key story moments of a popular song. So you can actually see those 5 key waypoints applied in songwriting. But now for the purpose of understanding what those 5 key story moments are, I'm going to go through them in a chronological order so you can see how it all comes together. So at the beginning of the story, the song's main character is living their life in their own world, a place where they fit in or they don't. And that world forms their context, okay? It's like their particular external or internal environment, their inner and outside world. And depending on the people and things within that world and how well the song's main character fits into their world, there's conflict that arises out of that friction. between the song's main character and their world. Because nothing ever stays the same, right? At one point, there's always some friction going on, some conflict bubbling up. And one day, one moment, an unexpected event arises out of that friction, out of the conflict that was bubbling beneath the surface, and it's caused by someone else, and it happens to the song's main character or to someone they know. Or it could also be a coincidence, a random event. And this is the first waypoint. It's the inciting interaction that upsets the status quo of the song's protagonist's life and throws it out of balance. And by the song's protagonist, I refer to the song's main character. In storytelling terms, we call the character who goes on that narrative journey, we call them the protagonist. And this thing that enters their life is a ball of chaos. When you've studied a bit of psychology, then this ball of chaos is Carl Jung's concept of the fear. P-H-E-R-E, fear. That's where it's derived from, because this disturbance, it evokes fear. So this is kind of how you can remember that thing that initially disturbs your song's main character's life. It's a fear that evokes fear because it's a disturbance and we don't actually know how to handle that thing. So you can also look at it like this ball of chaos, as you can see it right here. And inside that ball of chaos, it holds the potential for creation and destruction. Because it's always, when something happens to us, it's always our own choice how we want to deal with it. So its true nature, in the beginning, when this disturbance first enters our life, its true nature is invisible in the beginning. That means the song's main character doesn't notice the invisible aspect within it. And so they see it as a one-sided problem with one solution. So that means they only notice the obvious thing about it that caused the disturbance in their life. So think about it like this. They either see that disturbance as a threat or as an opportunity, but they don't see how the opportunity can also be a threat and how the threat can also be an opportunity. In the beginning, they only see the one obvious aspect of it and not the other side of it. And focusing on that disturbance, it causes the protagonist to envision, to see a goal. And they try to pursue it because they think it's the best option to deal with their problem, to deal with that disturbance that they perceive as this one-sided thing. And because it's one-sided, it only for them has one obvious solution. It's the solution that they can see, that they can picture. It's what they consciously want. A clear goal where they can see themselves having gotten rid of that initial disturbance and everything is back as usual or better. And as they pursue that goal, as they're on the way of trying to get rid of that disturbance, they encounter obstacles and affordances within their world. These are the progressive complications that raise the stakes. So all that means is they encounter obstacles and affordances along the way that either help them move closer to their goal or that make it harder to get there, but not impossible. And ultimately, another unexpected event, that is moment number 2, the turning point, arises from the context that allows the protagonist to make sense of the inciting interaction, of that initial disturbance. And now they understand that they face a double-sided problem. This means the way they looked at that initial disturbance, it changes now. In a prescriptive tale, they suddenly understand both aspects of it. In a cautionary tale, they fail to do so. Nonetheless, this second unexpected event makes them realize that the initial disturbance has turned into a real problem for them. So something that used to be objectively a pain in the ass has now turned into something that objectively represents a problem for them. So at first, it was very on the outside for them. It was a disturbance on the outside. They could still keep their distance from it. They could still try to ignore it. But then with another unexpected event, they cannot ignore it anymore. It's like right in their face, and they internally understand that this is their problem now. They gotta deal with it. This subjective experience now that disturbance that once was on the outside, it's now on the inside. It's like a problem for them. And the turning point helped them to get to that revelation that this disturbance is a real problem. And so they lose their footing. This unexpected event throws them into a crisis. And now they face a dilemma. And that puts the pressure on them to act, to make a choice before it's too late. They can't move forward unless they make a choice first. It's a this or that choice with no clear way to go. And they have to weigh the competing two ways that they can turn and the possible gain and loss associated with each direction, while also considering and evaluating the risks involved. So it's like they understand now what's at stake with each option. And they understand that they can't have both. Each option comes with a possible potential gain, but definitely with a loss. So they are under a lot of pressure as they face this binary, this or that choice. And in a prescriptive tale, they understand that they face this double-sided problem. They see both ways. They realize the full scope of the disturbance that upset their life in the beginning. And they realize the stakes and risks involved that come with each of those two options. And ultimately, they make a choice and decide and act on that decision in the climax. So it's not an internal decision, but they act on it. They choose one option and sacrifice the other, accepting the risks involved that come with deciding for one thing and deciding against the other. And as a consequence, the world around them responds in the resolution, which is the fifth and final waypoint, the fifth key story moment. This is when we see the consequences of their decision and how getting what they wanted or needed, or getting both, how that impacted their world in return. We also see how well they fit into their world now. Maybe they fit in a little less, or maybe they fit in even better. After all, things have irrevocably changed for them. It's the outcome of their choice. This is the place where you can best show if their choice was the right one to make in the given context or not, because the world reacts in turn on what they have decided. It's cause and effect. The decision that they acted on was a cause, and the effect is how the world reacts to what they have done. So the resolution shows if they get rewarded, however that looks like, and in a prescriptive tale, it highlights that positive, empowering message that gives people the go signal to actually see if you're ever in a situation like this, this is the best course of action to move forward, to move on with your life. So in short, that's how the 5 waypoints work together with the key elements in a prescriptive tale. And by key elements, I refer to the components that we actually need to tell a story. So we need to have the song's main character, of course. They need to face a double-sided problem. They need to have a goal so that they actually start moving and not stay stuck in one place. So we have to give them a goal, something that they want, something that they go after. And then we also need to include stakes, and there must also be a sacrifice. Those are the key elements that work together with those key story moments. So we have the inciting interaction that affects the song's protagonist, and they see that disturbance, that initial disturbance, as a one-sided thing, which in turn awakens in them this conscious goal that they visualize as the best way to get rid of that initial disturbance. But then another unexpected event hits them, the turning point, and they realize they face a double-sided problem. And in turn, this revelation throws them into a crisis where they have to evaluate the risks involved and weigh their options. And there's a lot of pressure on them to make a decision. And the climax is when they follow through on their choice. And the resolution lets us know how it all turned out for them. They might have gotten what they wanted or what they needed, or they got both. But they managed to solve their problem in a helpful way, or maybe in a way they didn't even think about. They didn't even consider, because that revelation during the turning point changed the way they thought about things, how they looked at it. And that's meaningful, because that's how the story becomes a prescriptive story for the audience and helps them to better understand the problem that they might be facing, helps them to see the other aspect of it. So a story you tell in your lyrics can also be a great source of enlightenment. And of course, in cautionary tales, the protagonists fail to understand their problem as a double-sided problem in time. That's why when they hit the crisis, they are not aware of the other option they have. They are still focused on one side of the problem, and they fail to recognize the complexity of it. And so they do not transform to adapt to the changing context. Instead, they double down. They stay stuck in their old way of thinking that didn't serve them well in dealing with that problem. But they hold on to that way of thinking because they think it's the only way how they can actually deal with it. So they don't see the other option. They don't understand that they could have chosen another way. It's like the other way is hidden in the fog. And so, of course, the world will also react to their decision to double down and show us the negative outcome. That's why we call it a cautionary tale, because it turns out worse for the song's main character. They made the wrong choice and now suffer the terrible consequences because of it. Just like you encountered in the song Stand by Eminem, or Like a Rolling Stone by Bob Dylan. Or just look at the song Billie Jean by Michael Jackson. He kept denying that the kid is his son, that Billie Jean is not his lover. And the consequence of it is that he went nuts. He kept spinning around in circles. He became the person who will dance on the floor and around, spinning around, because he keeps doubling down. He keeps denying that the kid is not his son. And he doesn't understand. He doesn't see that he actually had the shot for having a family. But because of his denial, he's not seeing that other option. And so the situation just gets worse and worse for him. So in short, that's how the 5 waypoints, the 5 key story moments, work together with the key elements in a cautionary tale. And if you want to dive into more detail on those 5 key story moments and see how they work together, what they are, how you can pull them off and see them applied in different song examples, then please also check out this video right here. It shows you how you can write a song that tells a story. Thank you for watching.